it's Lauren, and welcome to the Rah Rah Podcast. So, today on the show, I interviewed Valerie Vincent, and basically, I chose to speak to Valerie because she's a woman who is very successful and she works in a really successful technology company. And I was really curious about, how it goes being a woman in technology, and what her career has been like. And it was really interesting because in our talk, Valerie actually gave me a lot of perspective on what it's like as a woman in a company like that, what it's like to work with employees, and essentially what it's like to lead by trusting first. Valerie was a really articulate guest, and I really liked a lot of her insight on things. So I hope that you will appreciate and enjoy the episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. Thanks again for all your support. Time for the show. All right, I'm Lauren Tuck and welcome to the show. Today I'm joined by Valerie Vincent. She is a chief of staff in a technology company known on the world stage, famous for their leading ERP systems. She also works with a business women's network, and I've asked Val to join me today to talk about women in business, especially in the world of technology. Hi, Val.
Hey, Lauren.
Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm excited to chat with you.
Me too. So obviously technology is something that we're all using. I've got a lot of different devices that I use, but I'm not really too familiar with the world in general. So it makes me very excited to be able to talk to a woman like you to kind of know a little bit more about it, especially the inner workings. So before we get started on what you're doing now and women in business and your point of view of women working within the technology world, can you tell me, first of all, how you originally got started in this world?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually quite interesting because I started working in technology when I was 16. So that was, wow, not to give out my age or anything, but that's been over like 18 years now. And I actually started working in an ERP system doing data entry as a student job as I was going through high school. And by starting to doing data entry, the manager that I was working with noticed that I had this ability to understand a little bit more about the system behind it. And she asked me if I wanted to take on a little bit more. And then from there, I started doing AS400 operations. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with AS400 operations, but it's an old system.
Okay.
And I actually started when I was 16. And then afterwards, as my career progressed, I went and studied in philosophy because I was telling myself, I'm not going to go in technology. I want to go and philosophize about, all types of theories and, life's existence. But funny enough, at the end of my studies, what I realized is that I actually kind of like technologies and I like what I can actually do with technologies as a career much more than what I can do with a philosophy diploma. Yes. So I went after that into telephony, so voice over IP phone systems. I went in and started installing phone systems and setting up phone systems and supporting and all of the things behind a call center solutions of what you and whatnot. So that was really interesting, and that also brought me to the company that I work for now. But at the time, it was a smaller company, and it got acquired by this now multinational company that I work for. And that brought me to go into project management later on in a space of technology, but completely different from the phone systems that I was working with. I actually started doing project management for commerce solutions. So, e-commerce, B2C and that sort of commerce platform. And a little bit now. I've been with the company for 7 years, and I've had many different roles, which is one of the great advantages of working for a for a large company, I think. Mm-hmm. And now it's brought me to being a chief of staff at this company. Would you like me to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I definitely want to know about that. But before we do, it does sound like your background is very diverse. Would you say that you have, certain areas that you specialize in? Is that kind of the phone area? Or would you say that, as time has gone on, that you've been able to kind of brush up on all the things you need to know, which has really helped you specialize in a variety of things within this world?
Yeah, I always, especially when it's those specialties, I found that those hard skills to learn are much more fast to learn and absorb. So what I would do is, I wanted to know all about AS400, and then once I got all the knowledge that I felt that was needed, then I wanted to move on to a different kind of technology, which was the telephony. And then after that, with the e-commerce platforms, that's what I wanted to do. And not to say that I'm an expert, but, I got all the knowledge that I needed in order to be as competent as I could be as a technical project manager in that role.
Now, when I've worked with developers and programmers and, those types of people, primarily through websites, I would say, a lot of the people that I've worked with in the world of technology have been men. Are you sort of an anomaly to be a woman in, your industry as well as in the company that you work for?
Not really. But I'll say it depends, because as a technical project manager, when I had that role, they were mostly women and strong women leaders. So that was actually quite nice to see. But I would say that, a lot of the women in technologies found their career, they started maybe they studied in software development and that kind of background. And then not too long after, they went into project management. So in those roles, I would say no. However, as a chief of staff, I will say, I will also say no, because they're mostly women chief of staff, but they're often women chief of staff for leaders that are men. So there's specific roles where we'll find women, but otherwise then there's still, I'll say we have trouble diversifying where we diversify.
Okay.
So we'll definitely have roles that are kind of targeted, and I find that sometimes as well, like those project managers that I worked with as women, and it might just be at the company that I worked at, but for my experience anyway, what I noticed is that they never asked to be in project management. Usually it's a promotion that they're proposed and that they take on. So there's something to say about how managers target specific roles for women in technology.
Interesting. So when you are at work, what's the kind of an average day for you as a chief of staff? I know you do travel the globe a lot. Your passport must be just full. Is that kind of a huge part of your role and of your daily jobs, I suppose?
Yes, absolutely. And it's actually going to be very interesting when we come out of COVID-19 crisis, what travel for business is going to be defined as, because I'm quite sure that we're finding out now that a lot of our business travels are not as essential as we made them to be. Usually I would say the first 6 months of the year, so the first half of the year from January through June, July, I would be 50% of the time traveling, and that's me declining a lot of opportunities to travel with that 50%. Mm-hmm. A lot of that role, though, being a chief of staff is something you have to be ready for everything, because things will get thrown at you that may be completely out of the blue. So, for example, last year I led a merger of another company, which was we were integrating 2 teams from that merger, and I needed to do the whole transition, not just from a people perspective, and I'm saying not just, although that is the most important in my opinion,
Yeah.
it was also from a process operations transition that needed to happen. So these sort of things make me travel a lot to the teams, because in the end, we have to build trust. We have to also get to know them, get to know what their needs are, get to know also what made them so special and why we acquired these teams, right? So, and where we can learn and where they can learn from us. So I would say a lot of that can be things like that. When I'm not doing these special projects, it'll be ghostwriting for the leader that I am chief of staff for. It'll be putting the business, all our operation numbers together. So for example, we have financials like a profit and losses that we have to look at. We also have our KPIs that I have to maintain, make sure we continue to be healthy month to month, and raise an alarm before it becomes problematic. So
Wow.
A lot of my day-to-days are around that. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, I do want to talk to you a little bit about working with different people, especially when you're talking about mergers. You know, that's got to be dealing with a lot of different types of personalities. But before that, just quickly, what is the best place that you've ever traveled to during your career?
Hey, that's a good question. Top of mind, I would say Boulder, just because Boulder, Colorado is one of the meccas for Ashtanga yoga, because Richard Freeman is from there. So for me personally, I love Boulder. It has such this beautiful spiritual vibe, and everyone's so open and connected with nature, and it's just such a beautiful environment. So yeah, I would say really quickly Boulder, Colorado.
All right. I like that. I have never been there, so I'll have to add that onto my bucket list for sure. Back to the conversation just about, you really interested me when you were talking about merging, different people, their systems and that sort of thing. There are so many diverse people in the world, and I find that it's difficult at times to kind of have everyone get along, especially in the work industry, especially if people are coming in and, you're almost trying to get people to do things the way that has been tried, tested, and proven in your own business. What are some of the skills that you use to kind of build relationships and deal with different personalities?
I would say listening, probably the first one, especially when it comes to a merger, because these people have gone through massive change in their life, because they had this stable job and all of a sudden they're not sure what this merger will be made out to be, right? And everyone, I think, when they're faced with a merger, sometimes they're asking that question a little bit more loudly than others, but inside of them, they're questioning, what will my role be in this company, or will I have a role in this new company? So when you touch people's livelihood, I think it's important that you listen and you're aware that these questions are emerging, or maybe they're not emerging. For example, one of the teams that we integrated were from Birmingham, Alabama, which is and it is actually a beautiful, beautiful city, and with amazing food, by the way, and the people are extremely welcoming. But these people were also very quiet, not necessarily the most outspoken. And so they may not say, hey, I'm actually worried about what's happening here. Mm-hmm. So you have to really listen and maybe look at, what are the questions that they're asking me? What are the questions that they're not asking me? And from there, I think that's one of the first thing. And the other thing that I will say is also trust forward, because you're establishing your relationships with people that have different backgrounds, different cultures than you. And if I have a good gut feeling about someone, I make conscious decisions to trust them at the beginning, because this way, once I trust them, it's easier for them to also trust me. And I think from there, we can actually build on a strong foundation earlier on, instead of, waiting for that trust to build over months and sometimes years. Because when you go to a merger, you need to execute fairly fast in order to make sure that, you don't have major losses, that your customers are still happy, your engagements with them are still going well. You can't afford to have any discrepancy in the quality of work that you deliver to your customers. So I would say trust, forward, and listen are the two major ones that I would say.
Do you think it's difficult to please everyone? I mean, you've just mentioned their coworkers, people you manage. How can you kind of please everyone? And is that even a possibility?
I think if you try to please everyone, you've already failed. You're setting yourself up for failure. I think that the goal is to be authentic. The way that you lead, the way that you actually do business with your customers. For example, one of the best things you can do to a customer is to say no to them, and to say no to them in a way that, it's not just, hey, I'm going to say no to you, but no, it's actually, if a customer is asking you for a feature, for example, I'm going to give an example of like a commerce platform, right? So an e-commerce platform, let's say that, and we've had these sort of requests where the customer says, hey, I have this, previous platform, and I used to take, fax orders. I also want that feature in my new e-commerce platform. Well, the question is not to you whether or not you can deliver that. The question to you is, should you be telling the customer, yes, we'll do it, because maybe it's not in their best intentions. Mm-hmm. And maybe this is a great way to say, actually, customer, I'm going to say no to that feature. Yes, we can do it, but I'm not going to do that to you because I'm not going to do you a favor. The favor that I'm doing to you right now is pointing out these processes that you have. Let's look at them and let's see how we can optimize them so that you can actually be more performant in the long run. So mm-hmm. I think that saying no is a blessing when it comes to customers. So trying to please everyone is definitely not the right approach. And I think that that's also helping to trust. A customer will trust you so much more from saying no at the right moment.
Mm-hmm. I think that saying no is so difficult, especially when you're in a sales-based business. I know that I've seen it time and time again where, a customer wants something and the sales rep or, whoever is trying to basically please that customer wants to do everything they can to say yes to the customer, even at the detriment of the business. Clearly with an example of trying to enable fax technology, it's ridiculously outdated. So that customer wouldn't look like they're modern. They wouldn't be, whatever the cost would be to add that in wouldn't be worth it. It wouldn't be a good return on investment for the amount of people that would be using that feature, et cetera, et cetera. So I think saying no, I would agree with that, is such an important thing to be able to do and very difficult. One thing that I endeavor to do on a daily basis, and I believe that you're similar, is learning something new. With technology, with the ever-changing world, how do you continue to grow with that world and, keep your finger on the pulse? Do you do daily learning? Do you have kind of like a structure where you upskill yourself? How does that look like for you?
So one of the things that we do, we structure ourselves in a way that it's very easy to be at the cutting edge of our own technology. So we maintain very close relationships with the product team. So I work with the services team, so we deliver services to our customers based on those technologies. So we're highly dependent on the product directions, and the different updates from the product. So we need to be actually familiar with those products, new features, etc., before the customer hears about it. Because the minute that it's out there and the customer asks, hey, can I have this new feature, and we don't know how to implement it, and we're the owners of that product, we failed. What we've done actually is that we've set up some cadences where we connect with our product team. We have so all our communication is very, very close with that team. So from there, this is how we continuously update ourselves. We have calls with those new features. We have a lot. The company that I work for has also great programs for enablement. So trainings that are available. We do have a lot of that. And But yeah, I will say that in world of technology, if you're not close to the product that you deliver, you will have problems in the quality of work that you deliver. And the customer will ask you about features that you're not even familiar with, because the minute that it's out, that it's been published as a new feature, the customer will want it. And you have to be able to be an expert on it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so important what you said as well, that it sounds like the business that you work for, they do have, kind of training and upskilling in mind for their employees. And I think that, sometimes when I look at other businesses, including businesses that I've been involved with in the past, that when they don't have a structure in place to try to grow their employees, that they end up getting left behind is in fact what happens.
Absolutely. And actually, Lauren, I want to add one thing to that, which is that last year, at the beginning of the year, we had a productive utilization target. So that was our KPI, which is basically time that we bill back to the customer that we have to account for. So and that number was around 75%. So that's quite a lot, but it still leaves out 25% of non-billable, non-productive time. And so around the end of the year, the company thought, let's look at how we can make the best use of that time for our employees, which I thought was fantastic, because that 25% allows for quality in your 75% of production, right? Yeah. So you want to use that 25% to upskill. And they actually said, let's use 7% of that to be enablement. And enablement is, tools and training, all sort of upskilling. And that might not sound like a lot, but that converted to a little bit over, I believe, 10 business days for everyone.
Wow.
Which is actually great. It's almost a full day per month of enablement. And obviously that's flexible. We can go up and down, but we wanted to make sure that we have in our employees' time, we have dedicated time for enablement. Mm-hmm. So that if we see that somebody across the year has not put any time towards that training, we can actually question, hey, what's happening here? Because that means that this employee, even though they might be working on, cutting edge projects, we don't want them to learn always with the customer's engagement, right? We want them to test their knowledge before.
Yeah. Of course, which is a better return on investment for your customer. So from a technological point of view, what future developments or innovations are you most excited about?
You know what? It might sound boring, but I can't wait for a marketing solution that is not creepy. I find that sometimes the solutions that we're using in order to target people can be a little too creepy. So yeah, it might sound like a boring ask, but I would love to receive just the right targeted ads for me that is like, okay, you weren't listening to my call, but at the same time, you know what I want. That good balance, I feel like we haven't found it yet in the world of technology, and I'm really looking forward to it. So instead of me looking for a product, it just presents itself as like, oh, that's exactly what I want, and I'll buy it. But until then, it just creeps me out.
Hopefully I won't get any messages later from Google Ads or something about Boulder, Colorado. So now you're also a member of a Women in Business network. How long have you been involved in that group, and what's the main aim of it?
I've been involved in that group for about 2 years. So it's still fairly recent. And every year we revise the mission, and we addended a little bit. So last year, we wanted to be inclusive of men. And so what we thought is, because before I was really empowering women in order for them to feel, to feel, how do you say, to feel empowered, go and apply for that promotion, and then after we realized that we weren't being inclusive of men, and in the end, at the company that I work for, there's mostly men in leadership roles. So what we realized is that we're not talking to the people that can actually make us advance the most, right? So last year, our goal was really to make allies out of men and see how they can empower us and what we can learn from them as well. And also a little bit having them understand what a good ally is for a woman in technology. And this year, I know we're in April, but we still haven't really defined that. I have to say a lot of our focus has changed towards our customer now with the COVID crisis, where we're looking at, how we can best help our customers. Considering that we're in technology right now, our customers are experiencing a massive disruption in their supply chain and in their e-commerce. So our focus has moved to that. So I can't speak yet about our focus for this year, but last year was very interesting about the allyship of men.
At the time of recording, we are in the middle of the COVID crisis. Valerie is based in Canada and I myself is based in Australia, and it's middle of April 2020, because obviously what we're talking about could be listened to years down the road. So that's interesting. We talk about kind of bringing on men as an ally. I think it's very important as well, not to have those sort of divisions and separations. But that being said, sometimes with women, what a woman needs might be different from what a man needs. So you're saying that you're still kind of figuring out what an ally looks like in regards to that, or what kind of an ally a woman needs?
Well, actually, we had to define it for the men in our company, because I think that they really resonated. It was when we started talking with men, they were like, yes, obviously I want to support you and I want to help you grow your career, right? But they didn't really know what that meant. So we actually held a lot of different sessions about what it means to be an ally. And we talked about things like, for example, you're in a meeting, you get cut off, to help give that woman a voice and to say, I'm sorry, I believe Christina here was speaking, right? It's these little things that they didn't know that they had that power to help us have a little bit more of a voice. There were things like also calling out inappropriate behaviors, which we see unfortunately far too often, and we'll see again faced. And one of the things also that we worked with is with men to define, hey, these are the things that you can help us with, and also women, how do you leverage your allies, right? Once they've said, yes, I want to be an ally, how do I call out to an ally, I need help? I had actually a situation back in October where I had my allies witness a situation where I was faced with sexism in the workplace, and he was a witness of that. And after I had a conversation with him, and I said, I'm going to need your help. I told him, I know I can count on your support here, and I'm going to need your help to help me call this out. I will address it, but I need you to support me in this. Right. And he was completely, after having this conversation, he was completely supportive. But he actually, and that was one of the findings that I found last year, was it was not something that men knew that, oh yes, this is where I have to step in. So if I hadn't called him out on this, he wouldn't have known. Oh, but once I did, he was like, oh, you're right, actually I should mention something as well. But so I think it's important for us, and it helps us women have a voice when men are allies, because it allows that dialogue to happen.
Right, you feel supported.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So over the last, 18 or so years that you've been involved in technology, how have you seen the role of women growing in that business evolve?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been very interesting, because I see a lot of low-level managers being women, and I see a lot of effort by leadership to also hire women, and not just women, but also diversity, which I think is fantastic. I've also seen a lot of diversity in our board members and a lot of effort also towards that, which I applaud, and I'm very proud of the company that I work for that one specific, these two specific things. What I will say is that middle level management is still very much men. It's also very much lacking diversity in general. We see often, for example, in our Asia Pacific regions, we'll see a lot of European men leading in those roles, things like that I think that we can do a lot more. We also haven't figured out how to do this whole eye of the inclusion and diversity and inclusion. I think that we're good at diversifying, but we don't really know how to include sometimes those people. And so what I've noticed is that there's been a lot more attrition. So we've seen people leaving these roles because they're not supported, because they're not included in conversations. And in the end, it's great that you hire. It's great to hire, but how do we make sure that that person can be successful? So I think that there's a lot more effort than just a hiring. The hiring process is your first step, and definitely not the hardest. So.
It almost sounds like just continuous support and checking in. Really, is that the role of HR? Is that the role of leadership? Is that the role of people, on the same level? How do you see that being overcome?
I started addressing it in the team that I'm in by trying to shift a little bit the culture that we're in, because the culture that I'm in and the team that I'm in as well is highly male dominated. It's very much not, there's not a lot of diversity. So what happens is that we allow for inappropriate conversations to happen. We allow for inappropriate behaviors to happen because in the end, there's not a lot of diversity. So what I did about 2 years ago is I started having conversations with the team about, let's have an open-minded mindset. How do we become open-minded? And I started talking about it starts by listening and a different point of view, and that you would not necessarily agree with, but listening, not just to listen, but to actually try to understand the other person. So I brought, and I know this is like really far from actually including diversity, but I think it needs to start there. We need to be able to welcome adverse or opposing or different opinions. We have to be open to understanding others and respecting others as well for their own point of views. So, and I think we've come a long way now, because it's been 2 years that people are more and more now also being aware of, hey, why am I reacting this way? Because sometimes we also, when we're faced with a differing opinion or a different view or something that we like, something new, we're shocked. We try to, we want to protect our own opinion. But I always say, try to listen in order to try to learn something new. And you will always find something to learn in someone's different point of view. So that's helped a lot, but we still have a lot to do, I think. And it's all by a culture shift.
And I think probably empathy and compassion come down to it as well.
Absolutely.
When you were speaking as well, one book that popped into my mind was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I don't know if have you read that book?
It's been on my to read list, but it's have amazing. To.
I would really strongly recommend that you do that and get everyone that you work with to read it too. It's just so fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Val, for joining me. I do want to take you through some quick questions, but before we end, is there anything that I didn't ask today that you wanted to speak on or that you feel like I should have asked?
No, I just want to say this podcast is amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to speak with you about this.
Great. Thank you, Val. So ready for some quick questions? So these you can answer as fast as you want, or if you want to take time, I'll still, allow you that. All right. So originally, what's your most influential book that you've ever read, or just one that you really want to recommend?
It's Mary Oliver. It's Thirst by Mary Oliver. And I know it's a poetry book, but it is actually the most beautiful book I've ever read. It is about grieving, but it is such a beautiful, positive way, and how she's found faith in her spirituality after her lifelong partner passed away. Absolutely beautiful and moving. It really opened my heart.
Awesome. Thank you. What is your favorite way to kick back?
To kick back, I will say, if it's not to read, definitely cuddle with Philo, my little fur baby.
Your cat?
Yes.
Very good. Furry friends are always a great way to kick back. Name a mentor or an influence for you, and why?
Oh my God, there's so many to choose from. I will say Esther Perel. She is a world-renowned psychologist, and the way that she communicates and she's able to actually bring people to a higher version of themselves is something that really teaches me a lot about humankind.
Love it. I've started listening to her podcast as well, her work podcast. It's very good. What is one piece of advice that you wish you knew earlier?
You know what? Trust yourself. It took me a very long time to trust myself and to trust that I will make mistakes and I'm going to survive them, and I will sometimes rock it, and that'll be fantastic. But just to trust myself, it took me a very long time, until like my late 20s, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great one. What's one thing that you want to achieve for yourself in the future? This can be personal or business related, whatever you want.
I want to go, and I want to go on a silent retreat for like a week, like 7 days, complete silence. It scares me, but yeah. Do you want to do it?
I don't know if I want to do it, but I have a friend actually who's just started one today for 10 days.
Wow.
Yes. Meditation from 4 a.m. till 10 p.m. Silent retreat for 10 days. Sounds tough. If you do it, let me know how it goes. What's one thing that you love about yourself the most?
How I'm passionate about everything. I think that's one of the things that for a long time I had trouble with it, because I wanted to be focused on one thing. And when I let that go and started embracing it, I just realized that there's so much more to life. And so I should embrace it. And I do now.
Love it. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Val. I really appreciate it and learned a lot today. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, please do leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and please be sure to share it with your friends. Thank you so much for your ongoing support.